Well, hey, friends, welcome to the Everyday Mulemanship podcast. I'm Ty Evans. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I'm super excited for this guest, the Decker Dietitian, right?
Yes, that is
So we got,
me.
heck yeah, we got Heidi. Heidi, I don't know how to say your last name.
It's a mouthful. I had a pretty big one before and then I got married and it got even longer, but
So
it's
let me try it.
Brackebusch.
Oh,
Okay, okay.
No, you just gave it away, so I
I
can't try
get
that.
it.
So Brackebusch.
Brackebusch. Yep.
Hmm. Yeah,
Don't try to
that's,
spell it.
yeah. I would have, I don't know. I was just gonna say Brackbush, but Brackebush. Okay, cool.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ty. Honestly, I'm really surprised to be here. I'm a avid listener to this podcast, among many others. So it's interesting now to be recorded and to be a guest,
Yeah.
but I'm honored.
Sweet. Well, I'm glad you're on here. So I had Jason and Alyssa Yonker on. Do you remember, them? Remember them?
Oh, I remember. My
And
buddies now.
heck yeah, they're awesome. They're wonderful. So they were the first to recommend you. They're like, "Hey, you should talk to Heidi." So I was like, "Oh yeah, cool." Because I thought you were really cool when you came to the clinic in Salmon last year, and that was fun. And I appreciated you joining us.
I'll be
So
back
what else
again.
suggested
Just
that
spoiler.
you're coming again this
Oh
year?
yeah, yeah.
Sweet, that's good. I always like salmon. I just hope for good weather.
Man, it was good
Always hope for
last
good
year.
weather. It was good, and I've had all kinds of weather salmon. I mean, I've had nice, like 60s, and I've had snow, and I've had wind and rain. I mean, everything. And it always it always gets me because we'll be out there freezing our butts off, and there's a beautiful indoor arena that we can't go into over there, right? Because it's full of
Right.
they put all the bleachers in like so
Grandstands. Yeah.
early. So I can never go in there. I'm like, oh man, it'd be so nice. But we're tough. We're tough. We're tough mountain people, so we can do it.
Yeah, you got to be tough to show up in salmon. Really, any time of the year it could snow, but yeah, April is interesting.
Yeah. So, let's talk about you, Heidi. Let's introduce yourself. Talk about what you do. A lot of my listeners might not know you and know what you do. So, let's start there. Talk about your life. Let's hear about it.
Sure. Yeah. I never really have a linear way of talking about it, so forgive me if I get down
We
a little
can.
rabbit trail here or
That's
there.
fine.
Feel
That's
free to
fine.
bring me back. But I guess for starters, yeah, Heidi Brackebusch. I work primarily as a packer, a mule packer, but I also have a degree in dietetics and work as a registered dietitian. So in this phase of my life, I'm more of a full-time packer, part-time dietitian, and that could probably flip-flop throughout my life, but very passionate about mules, mulemanship. I have a long history there I'll kind of go into, and then also food and nutrition and just health and wellness, and primarily the aspect of that being the nutrition side of things. So I guess for starters, on the mule side of things, since we are more mulemanship based here on this podcast, I started off growing up in central Idaho, uh, born and raised there. My dad, being a fisheries biologist, I figured you'd like to hear about that, chose
Yeah.
where he wanted to retire there, kind of close to Grangeville, Idaho, because of the proximity to good fishing. So that's where I grew up in Cottonwood, is the name of the small town. And my dad's kind of the type of guy. Have you heard the Core Blund song "Never Not Had Horses"?
Mm, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I
If you
think so.
have,
I think I have.
and your listeners, you would get a kick out of that song. But he's kind of the type of guy. He's never not had them. He's always had them
Mhm.
around. And growing up, I would always want to go out and spend time with them, stuff like that. And I just became hooked, kind of a horse crazy girl from the beginning. And through my upbringing, my grandma, she got really into showing mules. And so she would drag me over to Montana Mule Days and put me on her steady Eddie mule named Clyde and, put me in all the classes, timed events, costume class, all that stuff.
Mhm.
And I just grew really fond of mules and all of the personality and character that they bring. Through that showing connection, I started babysitting for Coyote Mule Company down the road in Cottonwood, Idaho when they were there. So babysat their son and just spent time growing up around, their ways of buying and selling mules and the folks that would come shopping and getting to know just mule people. and kind of continued on. Eventually, in the summers, I had to get a little bit more of a job than just babysitting. But my dad, having all the connections in the backcountry through his fisheries work in Idaho, he set me up with a summer job at a backcountry ranch right off the South Fork of the Salmon River in central Idaho. So that's big hunting and outfitting area. And this ranch happened to winter and feed a lot of the outfitter stock. So there were, 20, 30 head of horses there at any given time, and a lot of ranch work to do, like moving hand lines and just feeding stock, all the care that went into that, and raising young stock as well. He had a stud there and a few brood mares. So we would go out, we would get paid to play cribbage with the young ones in the barn and just spend time around horses, and I was eating it up. So spent from when I was 10 years old to when I was 17, my summers there at that backcountry ranch, just doing all sorts of ranch work. But that's kind of where my passion for food and nutrition started, because the ranch manager's wife is super into cooking, gardening. They had a huge garden there. And I really got interested in the kitchen because, Judy Hull is her name. She's really invested in the food component of things. So she has a passion for it. She actually wrote a cookbook. So I spent a lot of time in the kitchen if I wasn't out, shoveling fertilizer or something that I didn't want to be doing quite so much. So spent a lot of years there, and got passionate about food and nutrition, and was able to kind of combine that with stock. So it was a really happy place for me, and I still have great memories there and some good friends. But yeah, so from there, I was connected. The daughters of those two ranch managers are all really accomplished. They're good horse people, but they're also just really good hard workers. And to pay for all their schooling, they all went off and did kind of separate degrees. They all fought fire to pay for school. And so when I was 17, going 18, they encouraged me to apply and fight fire to pay for school. So I started studying food science at the University of Idaho and fighting fire in the summers to, kind of pay for my own education, and also just get to work outside and do physical labor, which I like to do. And so, yeah, that allowed me to pay for school and also combine my nutrition schooling with kind of an athletic population that gets overlooked a lot. So I did a thesis project in wildland fire nutrition and, got pretty involved in that and spent 5 seasons fighting fire, and continued to do some stock stuff on the side in my off time. But really, where I got a lot more opportunity was during the COVID pandemic. And I know that you've probably observed this. A lot of folks really augured into their horse and mulemanship during that time because it was, you had a lot of time at home, isolated, but you could be around your stock. I mean, did you experience that? Did you see some of that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean 2020 itself was weird, because like half our clinics got canceled, which sucked. But like the following that fall of 2020 and into 2021, I mean, that's when everything just went crazy. Huge change for us. I mean, we started the podcast in 2020,
Hey,
and
yeah,
we started our video library in 2020, and then that's also when I started building my master class, which that took me 3 years to build. That was a big deal, really big project. But that's when I started making it. So yeah, all
yeah.
that time at home, you take away clinics from me. I got a lot of brain power I got to use up. Like
That's right. Yeah, you can't just be idle.
yeah, I got
That's
somewhere. I need to put that stuff somewhere. So that's what I did. But
that's
yeah,
for sure.
people interested. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that was definitely a time when I think a lot of folks just revisited their stock and were able to spend a lot more time than usual with their normal
Mhm.
jobs. So that kind of happened with me, and I was doing grad school online, which was just a difficult thing to do. I mean, I don't mind, podcasts like this when we're quite a few miles apart are great, but taking Zoom classes was difficult. So I would go
Yeah.
out and spend a lot of time with stock just to break up the classroom days online and all that. So I really kind of augured into that side of things, in conjunction with my schooling, and uh, got involved in my local backcountry horseman chapter. A lot of folks have those in their area because I had some interest growing and packing, and I happened to see a job posting from the Forest Service online packing, and with all that idle time, I started really auguring into packing and reading books and all that. And the Backcountry Horsemen chose to send me to a packing clinic over at 9 Mile Ranger District, north of Missoula. And they do a lot of traditional Decker style packing. So I took a basic and advanced packing class there, and I was just hungry for more and wanted more experience. So saw this job posting and applied, and it took quite a while, and finished up my schooling, but actually got a position within the Forest Service doing packing, which was kind of a interesting job to get right after grad school for a nutrition degree. But it's been
That is.
incredibly fulfilling, and I've been able to really bolster my skills in packing by just getting a lot of repetitions and a lot of time spent with stock. So that's kind of led me to where I am now. I'm still using my nutrition degree, doing some business on the side with a company, which I can talk about a little bit more later. So doing some nutrition work there, working at a hospital part time, and then packing full time. So very busy, but all stuff that I love to do. And like when you really enjoy something, it doesn't feel like you're working. So I don't feel like I'm working at all, but somehow paychecks keep coming in, and I keep learning more and having a good time. So yeah, I feel lucky, and that's kind of where I am right now. But if you have any questions about
Oh yeah.
some of those little side notes.
Well, you've done a lot. Like, I think it's, I wrote this down as you was talking that you're working on a food science degree, but then you just decide to go be a firefighter. Like, like, you what the heck?
I know.
That's like, people don't do that. What's the deal with that?
Well, yeah, from those three gals who were raised at this backcountry ranch, they had a big
Mhm.
influence on me growing up, and I saw, what they had done and what fighting fire kind of allowed them to do, and how well-rounded of folks they were. And I thought I should try that out. I like physical work
Yeah.
and I love to be outside, so I applied, but I was really scared. I mean, it's physical. There's fire behavior going on, and there were too many unknowns. But I jumped in and learned a lot along the way, and made some of the best connections. Mule folks are a great community of people that I know, and there's a lot of folks in wildland fire that I'm still connected with. So that's been really fun. But what I think is kind of funny is on in one of my last seasons of fighting fire, I was on a fire in the Salmon River breaks outside of Riggins, Idaho, and I heard over the radio that a packer was going to be resupplying our division. And I just remember thinking in that moment, like, what? A packer for the Forest Service? Like, this guy's getting paid to ride around this fire with
Yeah.
mules. How do I get to be doing what that guy's doing?
Mm.
Which is kind of, excuse me, kind of ironic, because little did I know that person would be the person that I'm working alongside right now, and one of my mentors in a huge way. So I think it's kind
Mhm.
of funny that about four
Yeah.
years prior, I thought I kind of want to do that next, and I guess somehow I kind of ended up here. So
So when you're fighting fire, I mean, that is so physical. And you being a food science major and having all this education about food, like, did you figure out how many calories you were burning in a day when you're on those fires? Did you ever do that?
it varied, and you have these watches which aren't entirely accurate, but you can get kind of a ballpark estimation. I mean, a person like me on the really hard days, it could be upwards of probably 4,000, 4,500 calories. But some of the bigger individuals they've seen, there's been some research done on it, and they can burn upwards of 6,000, even a little more calories per day, which is really hard to do, especially if fire behavior is real active and you don't have a lot of time to sit down and eat lunch. It can be really hard to get enough fuel in. So a lot of folks lose weight over a season,
I
and
bet.
just can't keep up with the calorie demands, because you're weight bearing, you're carrying a pretty heavy pack, 40 to 60-ish pounds, and it can be really tough.
Yeah, I've kind of dived into the nutrition space, trying to learn more, trying to be better myself.
Mhm.
Um, y- Part of like, you've heard the thing, and I've had a bunch of people on my podcast lately say this, like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And like I'm trying to be so much more aware of mules and all kinds of things, but then it's led me down this path of trying to be more aware of myself and like how I feel and how I operate and how my moods affect my mulemanship, and then the things that affect my moods. And like, and then it's food. Food's a big part of it, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
I never really thought about the whole calorie thing. It'll make Sky mad sometimes because like I'll go to a branding and do a full day of branding, and I will seriously, I could drop 15 pounds at a day of branding just so quick, because it's so
Yeah.
physical. And you just go and you 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 don't eat until the very end. You have dinner or something.
Hmm.
And then the other part about it, you don't drink, which is bad. And but but I didn't realize at the time that, man, I'm burning a lot of calories. That's some serious work. And then other times, I'm on the road trucking, I'm not burning calories. Like you'll see that weight go up, and you're like, oh, geez, that's crazy. And anyways, so yeah, that's the kind. I've just kind of nerded out on some of that stuff lately, trying to figure things out, and
Oh, for
different
sure.
different times of my life, like clinic season two. Yeah, it's crazy. Clinics, it might not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but they're pretty physical. Like it's a lot of riding, a lot of moving, a lot of stuff happening, and then for me, like the alertness. Like I realize what I eat affects how alert I can be and like how responsive I am. And then, because there's some clinics that seem like they just flow, like they go so good. And then some clinics don't. And I'm like, how come I felt like crap at that clinic? And I start paying attention to things I eat. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I definitely want to hear about that kind of stuff because, man, it makes a difference. And I think a lot of people experience this type of stuff and they don't realize how like nutrition can be related to their mulemanship, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a packer over in Montana that I've learned a lot from, and he talks about how you can't let yourself get hangry because it absolutely impacts, how you react to things going on in the day and your
Oh yeah.
alertness and you're kind of in tune with what's going on. So that's for sure. That's a huge one. One question I have for you, just you're on the road so much, how do you navigate that being on the road, cooking in a small kitchen, maybe? What do you guys
Luckily,
do?
luckily Sky's awesome. And she's always trying to eat better and force me to eat better. But I got away with so much so young. Like I got
Hmm.
away with so much, when I was rodeoing and working and I've always been extremely physical in my whole life, just very physically active and I've always exercised. So I've got more particular in how I exercise now. I used to just do random stuff, but yet, I mean, I was moving every day. Um, so like I could just eat stuff. I could eat whatever I wanted and it'd be fine because I just burned it up, right? But it wasn't until I started paying attention to how I felt, even though, like I've never had like weight issues, right? I mean, I've never had that to worry about. In fact, I've always had the opposite of making sure I have enough weight on,
Hmm.
um, because there's been times I've been pretty weak, and I realized because I was a little shrimp. But I've started paying attention, like how I feel when I eat something, like you're talking about, or when I eat the whole hangry thing. That's a real thing, right? Like it's amazing how if you're a little off in your gut, it can make you irritable, like or ornery or just whatever. And so Sky does a good job. We try to cook as much as possible. We get invited to a lot of dinners and a lot of things. And that's harder because we don't have control of I mean, what's going to be offered, but we have control of what we partake of.
Hmm.
So it's just, I guess I keep it simple, just try to have the bulk of for me, protein. I'm trying to get as much protein as I can in, because it seems really hard to get what I need in a typical day. And then, plenty of greens, but along comes that cake and that dessert and those brownies. I'm a sucker for brownies.
Yeah, and your brain's saying more, more, of course.
So now I've said, okay, how many push-ups do I got to do? What I got to do to burn that off, right? How am I going to pay for that? How am I going to pay
Totally.
for that dessert? And I've never been one to like, okay, no, don't touch the dessert, right? Don't, that's bad. No, it's fine. You just got to pay for it. How are you going to pay for it? And of course, you got to burn those calories. So, anyways, it is hard. The road days are the hardest because,
Yeah.
you're trucking and it is a pain. It is such a pain to prepare food, on the road. You have to either prepare ahead of time, um, which, which is fine, but it's really easy to pull over and buy something. It used to be, actually, it's not as easy now because we have our big rig. But way back in the day when you had we had our little rig, we could pull in anywhere. Now I have the semi and the big tour trailer. So I'm like, nope, can't stop there. Can't stop there. You know,
Oh
so
yeah.
it actually it kind of forces you to be better about, preparing stuff. But anyways, yeah, it is challenging on the road. So it's just like, we call them trucker treats. Every truck stop you get the trucker treats, and you got to avoid the trucker treats, right? Don't fall
Yes.
for it.
No, but the
Don't.
Cinnabon smells so good when you go
Oh,
through there.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. But there's always a refrigerated section, right? Like all these truck
Yep.
stops have a refrigerated section. So, okay, go there. And you can always find protein there, something fresh there, something not so processed. It's still processed a little bit there, but I mean, not, you know, it's not over there on the aisle that lasts for 5 years. So, you
Yeah,
know,
absolutely. I talk
it's,
about that stuff a lot with the wildland fire population because
mhm,
they're traveling across the country for quite a few months at a time. And oftentimes that's what they're limited to in the buggies is stopping at,
mhm.
gas stations pretty often. And I gently remind them that, yeah, the only section in the convenience store isn't just energy drinks and,
Yeah.
candy, as much fun as that is to consume. And when you're really going, you could, burn those calories. But, like you're saying, for a day in the truck, you can find good choices in just about any store now. I think marketers have realized that people are looking for this kind of stuff. So it's available and it's out there. But yeah, not always the um, most enticing stuff, maybe.
Oh yeah. Well, something I want to ask you about that is just super interesting to me, is how does what we eat affect how we think? Like, so how come when I eat crap food, how come I can't think as clearly? How come have a shorter fuse, a shorter temper, what's going on inside there?
Well, I guess most simply, if you eat real simple, refined foods and rely on those all the time, that's really simple, quick energy. It's not very sustained fuel, if you will. So that's going to cause your blood sugar to, come up quick, but crash fairly quickly too. But when you incorporate things like fiber, like you're talking about those greens or protein sources, that really helps, even everything out. So you're not having such a peak and crash. It's more of a steady source of energy and it lasts longer for you. Uh, in combination with that, there's just more micronutrients in those foods, like, protein rich things, fruits and vegetables, things like that, which aid in cognition and other metabolic processes, things like that. More of those refined processed foods, they might enrich them with a few things, but it's really not as nutritious of food, which doesn't support, normal bodily functions and just cognition either. So, yeah, you kind of get out what you put in. And I think more and more folks are recognizing that and recognizing that it's worth investing in your food, a little bit rather than just bargain bin shopping and getting what the taste buds crave because you really do. You get out what you put in, and that affects your whole life, your sleep, everything.
Yeah. So like I'm particular what I eat at lunch, especially during clinics, like what I eat at lunchtime, because it seems like, and maybe you can help with this, like, because I don't have a dial on it, because there's sometimes that I eat something and I'll do pretty good, but then like, oh, you kind of get that afternoon crash, you're like start to be tired. But then sometimes I'm good. And, I've tried to dial it in. Like when I feel the best is when I have a tuna fish sandwich, like
Okay.
whatever it
That's
is, like I do good. Like I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. Like maybe it's just because the super high protein. I
hmm
don't know, maybe some of the fat from the mayonnaise, I don't know. But like I feel pretty good. Whereas I don't know. I don't like that's kind of I always have a sandwich at lunch, it seems like.
but the
But
tuna fish is the golden ticket, huh?
yeah, the tuna fish seems to keep me going. But yeah,
Yeah.
what kind of stuff are do we take in that makes us have those crashes that makes us so tired at different times?
I would say predominantly carbohydrate is going to give you that effect. Now, if you haven't eaten in a while and you have a meal, it's typical to have that kind of rest and digest,
Mhm.
relaxed feeling afterwards. I guess if you think about it in kind of a primal way prior to, now our comfort living sort of day and
Mhm.
age, back when you used to have to hunt and gather, you were kind of amped up, you were running kind of on adrenaline when you were trying to catch whatever you were trying to get or harvest whatever you were picking. And then once you consume that meal, you were able to, physiologically kind of come down, rest, digest, like, okay, I'm satisfied for a while. So there is some of that going on
Mhm.
too, which is normal and fine. And there is a little bit of after lunch sleepies. But the other aspect of that could just be if you have a real simple carbohydrate meal, you're burning through it pretty fast. It's not real sustained energy. There could be some of that too, and it's more of a blood sugar type crash rather than like a rest and digest sort of feeling. That could be mitigated through smaller meals more often. Now you don't probably have the luxury during clinics to have snack time. Although in salmon, maybe I'll make a push
That
for
sounds
having
great.
snack time.
I think that's a
But
great idea, Heidi. Let's have snack time in the middle of the clinic.
yes, but if you do have smaller meals more often, that can
Yeah.
kind of mitigate some of that sleepiness and just give you more sustained energy. Now, the tuna fish sandwich probably has adequate amounts of protein, carbs, and fat, like you're saying, to give you carbs for energy. Protein gives you kind of a sustained feeling of fullness, and then the fats are just satiating. So maybe, yeah, trying to match some of your other sandwiches if they don't have quite as much protein, maybe try to up the meat or whatever it may be. But yeah, I think that's probably what you're seeing there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does seem like if I eat more, then I'll get more tired.
Hmm.
And me being tired is relative because you know me, like it's hard to get me tired. Like my
Yeah.
tired might be somebody else's high energy because I'm kind of a high octane, high energy guy. There's always a joke I tell people, man, imagine if I drank coffee, like I'd be bouncing off the walls, you know?
Out.
I'm
Yeah.
so I'm always go, go, go. But no, but like I yeah, if I just have like just tuna fish sandwich, I feel pretty good in the afternoon. But if I have a bunch of other stuff or whatever, it seems like I get tired more easy. Um, what about like let's talk so that's enough about me and my clinic schedule. Like what about on these big day rides? Like when people are going out and they're riding, like when you're packing, you know how you taking care of yourself out there? Let's think about people going out for a trail ride, maybe they ride the bulk of the day, and they're going to pack along their lunch. And um, what do you recommend to them? Like, what do you do?
Well, I get off and walk a lot. So I pack a pretty heavy lunch with quite a few options, especially because my day starts really early. I have my breakfast probably around 6, because I try to go out and get things rolling to beat the heat. So that means that about 8:30, I'm hungry again because I've probably been walking and moving around for quite a while. So I pack a really heavy lunch with a lot of bars and cut up veggies and fruits and applesauce packets, all sorts of things. And I try to eat something around every 90 minutes just to keep my energy levels up, keep my focus, going right, keep me from getting sleepy and, kind of losing track of what's going on behind me, what's going on in front of me. And I pack things that are easy to eat while riding, things that I can eat with one or no hands at all. A lot of good protein sources. And I also pack electrolytes because, I can fill up at a stream every 3 or so miles on most of my trips. And during the peak season, I'm sweating a lot, losing a lot of electrolytes. So that can really be helpful for folks, even if you maybe don't necessarily think you're an athlete or need a Gatorade. You're probably sweating quite a bit, and you can tell because look for sweat lines on your hat or on your t-shirt. That might be an indicator that you're losing quite a few electrolytes and you might need to replace those. So I have a lot of beverage mixes with me and just convenient sources of quick energy, steady sources of protein. And then if I have the luxury on a trip, I try to pack quite a bit of produce just to get that fiber in, because even though I'm out and about, I have the luxury of having a, full string of mules. So I can kind of pack some of those things that I know I need to get in.
Yeah, I like Element. That's
Hmm.
I I like those little packets. I usually take one with me whenever I go out on a ride. I always have one. And it does make a difference, especially like I've noticed when you do eat, I'm not, I think I'd be a hypocrite if I said I'm a clean eater. But when I'm trying to eat more clean, then I'm not getting all those processed foods with so much sodium and all the other things in it, and it makes a difference. I started having one of those every morning, like before I work out, like get up
Yeah.
and like have 32 ounces, dump an element in there, and you know, and I feel pretty good in the morning. I feel pretty good doing that.
Yeah. You
Makes a
probably are
difference.
one of those people who's not getting enough. And like you're saying, if you eat minimally processed stuff, an occasional processed thing here or there even is not really going to give you a whole lot of sodium. And with heavy sweating, you can lose what the American Heart Association recommends in an hour. So it's kind
Wow.
of crazy just how much electrolytes you might be turning over. And I get really passionate about helping individuals who might not recognize that they should treat themselves like an athlete. So, a lot of folks that work with stock are working long hours in environmental conditions like heat, doing real physical jobs, but might not recognize like I might need to treat myself a little bit more like an athlete. So I think that's really cool that you kind of discovered that about yourself.
Yeah, just going down one rabbit hole after another,
Nope.
trying to
Yeah.
learn. Um, yeah, yeah. So so like, how much does protein matter for keeping up? I guess this is my question, or this is the thought I want you to chase down here is it feels like when I get adequate amounts of protein, I have more awareness in the day and it keeps my focus better. So like especially um I one clinic that comes to mind that is like for me hyper focus, like I have to pay attention, like so much attention is my colt starting classes. Like those are
Mhm.
classes that I can't really, there's some mulemanship classes. But I got a bunch of people that have rode with me for 10 years and, we're working through things but it's not really high stress. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, I pay attention, no doubt, but I mean like in the cold starting, every moment matters. Like I have to pay attention to every detail. And I feel like protein makes a difference for me when I do that.
Mhm.
Like if I got enough protein in, I feel good. Like I feel like I can pay attention. I stay focused. What's going on with that stuff?
Well, could be a number of things. And when you have these meals, is it predominantly protein, or you're just saying like you feel like you're getting a good amount of protein in combination with other things?
Now, in those cases, I'm trying to focus on really getting more protein, like
Yeah.
making sure I get plenty of protein and without like overdoing my fat. Like I keep track of my macros and stuff.
Yeah.
So like fish, I don't know. Fish are my friends because I can eat like I love steak. Don't get me wrong, I love steak. Like I'm a steak guy. Okay, that's my choice. But I mean, you can only eat so much steak, right? Like you can't, and it's expensive. So
That's for sure.
fish seem to get me the protein I need without going over on my fat. Um, anyways, I feel aware when I'm getting that in. Um, the crazy thing that's happening for like me, Heidi, is like like we have this master class, right? And I have all these coaching students. And what's just crazy for me is, how I started out, I thought I'm just going to be this mule training coach, right? Like help them with their mules, like just like ask me mule questions, right? But yeah, but then I start dealing with things like people saying, well, I wanted to work with my mule today, but I'm so tired. I need to get to sleep. And, and just from, brief inquiries, like I'm not you. I'm not a nutrition coach, right? And I'm not a health coach of any kind. I'm not a mental coach, right? I'm a mule coach, okay, people?
Yeah.
But I'll ask them like that. So I'll say, well, how much sleep did you get last night? Just, give me an hour. I don't need to dive deep into it. And they'll say, oh, I got like 7 or 8 hours. I'm like, but I'm still so tired. Well, why are you so, well, how you eating? Like, what did you eat today? They're like, oh, I just haven't had a chance to eat today. I've just been so busy. I'm like, well, you're tired because you haven't eaten anything. Like, you need some fuel, and and then we get to some point, I'm like, okay, I'm not a nutrition coach. talk to somebody else. But, but I guess I'm trying to make this relationship here for people is, how you feel is going to affect how you ride, and how you eat affects how you feel, like your energy levels, your focus levels. Like the deeper I go into that stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, mulemanship, it might even start clear back in the kitchen. Like,
I love that. Yeah, this is a quote of the day right there, Ty. Yeah. I
yeah.
think that's absolutely true. People often overlook this component, nutrition, in being something that can, like I was saying earlier, affect all parts of our lives. And I mean, how we show up for our meals and what we, work on ourselves is representative of, how far we're willing to go for them. We're asking a lot of them to make these changes and grow and work on themselves, with our help. And I think it's only fair to kind of look within too and look at some of these aspects. Are we working on our physical fitness, things like that? Are we capable of doing these maneuvers just like we're asking them to be, capable of? And the nutrition component is no different, I feel like.
What about water? Um, so this is something that it bugs me. But I understand, but it bugs me. Well, let me tell you a quick story. Okay. I told this a couple weeks ago on the podcast. So it's going to be a repeat for my listeners. But um, a long time ago, like way back, Sky was getting after me. She's like, you need to drink more water. You're not drinking enough water. Okay, well, how much am I supposed to be drinking? I misunderstood. Okay. I thought she said that I was supposed to drink an ounce of water per pound of body weight. Okay. Well, it turns out it's only half, right? The just the general is
Hmm.
like half. Okay. You know, yeah, half an ounce per body weight, per pound of body weight, right? So, anyways, I drank so much water for like the longest time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to pee every 2 minutes. I have to pee. Like, like you go to the bathroom and then you walk out and you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta go again. This can't be right. And I was complaining to Sky about it, or we were driving somewhere. She's like, oh my gosh, you got to go again. Like, holy cow. And I said, yeah. She's like, how much water are you drinking? I said, well, I told her. She's like, oh my gosh, no, it's half that. What are you doing, you idiot? And, but through that mistake, there was a blessing found, because like my joints felt so good. And I'd always had issues with my joints, like all the time. My knees hurt all the time. My elbows hurt. All the joints hurt, right? And when I was drinking all that water, I felt really, really good. I felt really good. And I felt like even I had more energy too,
Hmm.
which I'm really conscious of my energy level. It makes a difference for me. Um, but so what I hear a lot of times, we'll go on these rides like with people, with friends or whatever, and it's like, I don't want to drink water because I don't want to have to pee. I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to drink water. Like you need to. It's. So talk about how that water intake is going to affect. Um, how's that going to affect things? Like, why do we need that water? What's the point?
Numerous things going on here. And I guess for starters, like you mentioned, your joints felt different. Well, what we know about our body weight is we're something like 80 something percent water within the muscle. So any, deviation from that could have a pretty big effect on how we function and our blood volume and all these things, how we carry nutrients to and from, and how the signaling goes on in our body with our electrolyte status and stuff like that. It can have a huge effect too on your energy levels and, how tired you're feeling. If you're dehydrated, oftentimes you feel a lot more tired, a lot more sluggish, things like that. And it can really have an impact on your hunger levels as well. Sometimes people are thirsty and they think they're, getting hunger cues, but really it's just the thirst mechanism going on within the body. So yeah, I would not condone trying to dehydrate yourself for a road trip or a ride, either one. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, especially on a hot day, it allows you to offload heat. I mean, it's comes down to safety too, not only just cognition and function, but yeah, you can get into trouble if you can't offload heat properly, and that's hydration plays a huge role in that.
Oh man, all these things. You've been around me enough. I'm kind of weird. Like I pay attention to all kinds of weird things. Like, and I'm always asking why. And so, kind of back to what I was saying earlier, like when I'm dealing with one of my students and they're having issues like being motivated to ride, Like I just didn't feel like it today. Well, why don't you feel like it? I'm tired or I'm more out or my like we're talking about joints, like I hurt, I'm sore, um, all these things. And, the more I learn about health and nutrition and all these other rabbit holes I go down, um, there's so many things there that I see. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're just tired. You're just wore out. Like, it's not that you don't want to ride. You just, because of your choices throughout the day, you have caused yourself to feel this way. And because you feel this way, you're thinking you don't want to ride. Like it's costing you your dream. You want to do this. Same thing. Like we'll go on these pack trips, right? And I got a friend, I'm not going to say his name on here, but one of my best friends, but he doesn't want to drink and he doesn't want to eat and he doesn't want to do these things. And then we'll be, on this pack trip for like a week or something, right? And we'll go out a couple days. We're out fishing, riding, and he's like, I just want to stay back at camp for a couple days, and he doesn't want to go because he's wore out. And I'm like, you're wore out, dude, because you don't got fuel. I'm like, just let me just pour some water down your throat. You know?
Yeah.
But like, I guess that's the thing that I've questioned a lot, people's real desires, and I think it I think it's a bad thing when our dreams and our goals are getting messed up because of a choice that we made that doesn't even have anything. We think it doesn't even have anything to do with it, like how I ate today or how much water I drink today might affect how I react this afternoon when my mule spooks at that rock. My mood, like because of what I ate earlier or what I probably because of what I didn't eat. And anyways, yeah, I can nerd out on that stuff all day. Heidi.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right. It's all surprisingly connected. I mean, like you said, mulemanship can start in the kitchen, and I mean, any relationship, any interaction with anyone can trace back to, how am I taking care of myself, and am I equipped to face whatever the day is going to throw at me? I think about that a lot. You were kind of mentioning this with your buddy who doesn't feel like he can go out from camp. I do a lot of work with backcountry hunters and folks trying to do, big hikes, mountaineering, stuff like that. A lot of them want to think that they need to lose weight on these trips and stuff like that, so they're kind of under fueling when they're out there because they think it's a hunt, I'll lose 10 pounds on this hunt, it'll be real convenient. But then they get
Mm.
out there and they get to where their base camp is, and they feel like they can't leave base camp because they haven't been fueling properly. They're kind of grounded because they haven't made a plan and plan to execute that so they can do what they've been building up this whole year and putting in for, to try to draw this hunt, and they can't even leave camp because they haven't planned their nutrition and fueled themselves properly. So yeah, it is huge, and you have to be pretty intentional and proactive about it. But I think about kind of, I guess, my philosophy, if you will, on nutrition and food and how it kind of ties in with mulemanship and passion for riding. And I think about, how can I set myself up for a lot of years in the saddle? And how am I going to promote my health so that when I'm, getting into my 80s, like some of my riding friends that I know now, how am I going to be able to have the energy to go out and saddle up my own animal, at 80? And some of that comes back to adequate protein, strength training. But it starts now. It starts when you're young. You're never too young to start thinking about riding into your later years too, and nutrition's a big component of that, along with a lot of other health factors.
Oh man. Like I was just saying about the water and like how my joints felt so good. I meet a lot of people that are whining about their joints and they love to complain that it's their age. And a lot of it is. I get it. I get it. I mean, I've met a lot of cowboys that they have worn themselves out. They're just used up. But I can't help but ponder and think, well, how did you take care of yourself? Like you're talking about, way back. How did you take care of yourself? Also, how can you change and start taking care of yourself now, and do things a little differently now that will improve that? It was amazing how
Yeah.
just a little water changed how my knees felt, and how uh like I can, if I don't get enough water, I get pretty sore in my hands, my knuckles, my fingers. And it's from all the, I mean, think of how many times my hands have taken a hold of a rein, and picked up on a rein or a lead rope, and I rope a lot too, just plain roping. And so, like I'll notice the difference there if I'm not getting enough water and taking care of things. And then I learned, and you can speak more on this, like the different macronutrients, your protein, your fats, and carbs and stuff. And like I see a difference in how I feel too, in joints and things if I'm getting enough fat. Like the fat seems to help a lot of that stuff. Or on the flip side of things, if I overdo, if I'm getting way too many carbs, it's something happens there too that makes me sore. I'm like, oh man, dude, you got to cut back on the bread, like too many rolls at Thanksgiving, right, or something. But um, it's just interesting to me how all that stuff connects to how we feel. And you've heard me preach it. I talk about it all the time. How you feel matters. If you feel good, you're going to ride good. And this could be, physical fitness being, you're getting your nutrition dialed in mentally. I mean, we've done plenty of podcasts on the mental aspect of things, but again, how you're fueling affects how you're thinking too, right?
Mhm.
And it's amazing how you can feel good about yourself or bad about yourself. Like, I don't care who you are. Um, I mean, like, I love ice cream. Okay. I love ice cream.
Me too.
I love it. I love it. And I love it while I'm eating it. But I have never felt great after eating ice cream. Not once. Seriously. Like,
Oh
not
man.
once. Like, after you eat it, and I mean, even if it's just a little bit, like, I'm kind of like, like you just don't feel good about yourself. And I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty because I promise I'm going to go eat some ice cream, like probably tomorrow. But like, my point is like there's something mental too. Like, what we're eating makes us feel different. Like when I have a good meal and everything is balanced, I got the protein I need. I got the carbs, good carbs, right? Green carbs. And I got the adequate amount of fat, and I'm getting plenty of water. Like when I see a meal like that and I take that in, after I feel good, and I feel good about my choices that I made for that meal, which gives me like a different mental state versus, pulled over at McDonald's and had a double cheeseburger. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, yeah, sure, I got some food in and I got, maybe some calories in that maybe I needed, but there's something mental going on too with that, like our relationship with food, like how what I chose to eat. And I'm like, I shouldn't have ate that. I feel like crap. You know? So
Yeah.
talk about some of that. Like how does what we're eating affect, like how is it affecting our minds? Like how we think about ourselves?
Yeah, I will for sure. I guess to that conversation, just thinking about making changes with your nutrition and changes within the body. Maybe it's weight loss you're interested in. Maybe you're interested in putting on, muscle mass. Maybe you just want to stay the same, but you've decided that you need to eat in a certain pattern, let's say. And maybe you are on a long trip and, the only options are fast food or something like that. And you opt for that. Things like that occasionally are fine as long as in general you're being real consistent with your nutrition. In the long run you're going to see those outcomes, and that's where I think people get caught up in nutrition and healthy eating, is that it's kind of a crash course. I'm either on this end of the spectrum, I'm really good, I'm really clean eating, things like that, or I go off the rails and I have a complete binge sort of cheat meal day, where I think the answer and the more consistent approach is somewhere in the middle. Being one thing I like that one of my mentors says is being consistently good is a lot better than being occasionally great. So, it's a long
Yeah.
game and it's probably not that glamorous. And you might meal prep things that are, kind of boring after a while. But being consistent is huge, and it's a long game. It's hard to make those consistent changes, and we live in a pretty confusing nutrition atmosphere with all sorts of misinformation and fad diets and this influencer just pushing this supplement and it's the
Yeah.
next best thing, it can be really confusing out there. But the answer lies in some pretty basic tactics, and a lot of those have stood the test of time. I'm not a huge fan of really any crash sort of extreme diet. There's things that we know. We know that you have to have adequate fiber and a variety of fruits and vegetables. Good lean proteins are always good. Nutrient rich things like dairy, things rich in calcium, all of these different food groups we know are good for us. So, relying on any one sole food group to have consistent weight loss, it might work in the short term, but in the long term, your health will be affected. So it's simpler than it seems, but it's a lot harder to achieve than most people realize. So I guess with that, focusing on what we put in our bodies and the different macronutrients and having a little bit of each one of those, they all play an important role. Um, is going to be kind of the solution, and there's so many ways to go about that, and that's kind of where finding somebody who can be a mentor for you. Maybe within your class they're looking to you, but I would encourage them to find somebody who is in the nutrition space, not necessarily me, anybody who has some credentials behind their name and maybe necessarily isn't pushing a supplement. They just want to encourage overall health. That's going to be a much more consistent approach than you have to consume this powder every day for weight loss.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Um, so I want to go back a little bit, because I didn't finish up my thought, I guess, on like what you're eating when you're out there on your trips, your pack trips I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you mentioned like, you got your protein and some things that are easy to eat, one-handed while you're pulling a pack string. So talk about that. What's in your saddlebags? Like, what are you choosing?
Yeah. I guess let me think. It varies. A lot of it's, kind of leftovers from the night before or, something like that for lunch. I use a lot of tortillas because you can wrap pretty much anything in a tortilla, I've found. And I pack hot sauce around sometimes. So any sort of wrap, I think it's always kind of ironic because occasionally the horse that I ride, his name's Taco. So I always think it's funny when I'm having a taco and I'm riding down the trail. Um,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
but my saddlebags, they're pretty full. Like I was saying, electrolyte beverages. I've got different kinds of energy bar, like oatmeal bars. I bake a lot of, cookies of sorts, just like energy dense bars that I usually make, and fruit leathers, things like that. Dried fruit. I eat a lot of dried fruit, nuts. All that stuff's easy to kind of graze on as you go. And then, at the end of the day, I'm just focusing on packing something that I can eat when I get to wherever I'm going. Sometimes there's cooking facilities in a cabin, sometimes it's more of a, cooking over the fire or a small camp stove, but I'm trying to kind of replenish what I've lost throughout that day. So, a good source of carbohydrates with a pretty good amount of protein. And I'm just taking that time to kind of fill in the gaps of what I wasn't able to get in throughout the day. But I'm a pretty proactive eater, I guess. I try not to let myself get overly hungry, just because I know then I'll get behind. And in a real physical job, if you are in a calorie deficit day after day after day, I mean, you're not gonna survive the season. You just won't.
Yeah.
You won't make it. So I'm pretty proactive, but it gets to be different because I think about a lot of the like fire personnel that I work with, where early in their career they're burning upwards of 6,000 calories, but then maybe later on in their career they have a little bit more sedentary job and just their metabolism changes over the years. They're not just at rest burning as many calories. So it's really fun to be able to help folks navigate like through the life cycle, how to fuel and how that changes as you age, how to, emphasize retaining your muscle mass and things like that, and how throughout your life cycle, really you kind of have to ebb and flow with the way that things go physiologically.
Yeah. So um, what's your favorite dinner on these pack trips? What do you like to have for dinner?
One thing I made a lot last year, we hunt a lot of games, so we make a lot of burger. and I pack stuff to make shepherd's pie a lot.
Mm.
I don't know why that sounded so good last year, but it's real easy to bring because I'll bring just dehydrated mashed potatoes and cook up the burger and maybe mix in some gravy mix. And sometimes I'll bring just like frozen vegetables and pour them in there. So I get kind of all my food groups going and then make the mashed potatoes, put those on there, and then some cheese, of course. But that can be made in a little more equipped kitchen or a pretty simple kitchen too, kind of a deconstructed version or in a Dutch oven or something like that. So that was kind of my go-to last year. That's just the first one that came to mind, but I love to experiment and I follow a lot of pages on Instagram and I have a lot of friends that work as camp cooks for outfitters and some of them are actual chefs. So it's fun to get inspired and try to bring a little bit more fancy cuisine into the backcountry just because you do have the luxury with the pack string. You're not confined. Although it is simple just to use freeze dry.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gone through phases of what I pack and how much I pack. I'm currently in a phase of like the backpacker version of a mule packer. So
Your
like
mules probably appreciate
they
it.
do. Well, like we've the pack trips we've done the last few years, like we're covering a lot of country, um, and moving camp a lot. And I mean, way back, I grew up, my dad, we had piles of packed mules and horses. Like my dad's a really good cook. So I mean, he'd pack in stoves and he's packing in the full kitchen and he's packing in fresh meat and dry ice, keeping stuff on dry ice. And like, he was the real deal. And I guess because I did that a lot, I kind of got like, you know what, I'm going to see how lightweight I can do it. And so uh, switching things out, switching gear out, like all kinds of stuff. And then I discovered Mountain House. So I started doing a lot of the Mountain House freeze dried stuff, which for freeze dried, it's not that bad. It's not too bad. But um, anyways, but I tell you what, after you do a week of Mountain House meals, you're like, I want fresh food. Like I just want like
Yes.
like real food, please. Something that's just fresh. Like I remember last summer, like I just wanted an apple. Like I just want an apple, just a fresh apple, like something
Yeah.
you can sink your teeth into. And so yeah, we do a lot of that. But
Yeah. It's amazing how much you miss that fresh stuff.
yeah.
One of my favorite parts of my job is getting to pack for some of these remotely like immersed crews in the wilderness
Mm.
areas. So they're back there, like for instance, last year there was a group that was back there the whole season. And so they would send out their grocery list and I, as the packer, would bring it in, and they always said I was like Santa bringing all the Christmas gifts. But what they were
Yeah.
most looking forward to was just like a simple bag of salad or, something fresh. One of the times they got a watermelon and I like packed a pie and all this crazy stuff. But it's
Oh yeah.
amazing how much you really savor food and it tastes so good when the views are great and the meals are running around and you haven't
Hmm.
had that stuff in a long time. So it is really fun to get to bring some of the trail crews, some of those things that you just really have a craving for.
Yeah, another one of my favorite things on pack trips. So usually, and I'm not like you. I'm not packing for a living. I'm just packing purely for fun, right? So if I get to go on 5 pack trips a year, it was a good summer, like really good. Um, so usually like on our first day packing in, we'll try to cover a lot of miles, like get way back in, right? So you've packed, you've been riding all day, you're hot, sweaty, like, but I'll pack in fresh watermelon like you're talking about, cut up. Like I'll cut it up back home or whatever. So I got these little slices of it in a Ziploc bag. So you get to camp, you put the meals out to graze and then you sit back and eat your fresh watermelon. Yeah, oh man, that's one of my favorite things.
You're just so food tastes so much better. You're so much hungrier too. So
Yeah.
it's an experience, I feel like. Yeah.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I like watermelon. We're recording this. It's February when we're recording this. This is probably not going to come out till until summertime. We'll be packing by the time this comes out, probably.
Yay.
So that watermelon will sound pretty good.
It'll be prime time. I know I haven't seen one in a while, but that's
Yeah.
one of my favorites. And the mules always like it too, because I mean it seems like 50-50 of ours like the Ryans, but the ones that do, they go crazy for
Yeah.
them.
So when you pack in for these folks, are you going to cook for them that first night? Like when you're there, do you cook for these crews much, or you just Santa Claus just dropping stuff off?
Sometimes I cook for them because I'll end up staying at the same place that they are, or just share a meal, try to bring cookies or something to kind of brighten their day. But sometimes it's just a drop and go, and it's always fun to see them. And they've been immersed with the same crew for you know 2 weeks. They haven't seen another soul because they're so far back there. So it's always kind of fun to see them and say hello and be on my way. But I always love to share a meal with them. And when I was going through my dietetics program, I remember my advisor asked us all, like, "What's your reason for doing this? Why are you so interested in this occupation?" And I said, "I just like to feed people," which I really do. I love to cook and host and entertain, and part of that is just yeah, coming together over a good meal. And when I get the chance to cook for them, I love to, but sometimes it's just a drop and turn and burn. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So, so do you just work for the Forest Service, or do you do other packing gigs besides the Forest Service stuff?
I just work for the Forest Service. We do some volunteer stuff with the Backcountry Horsemen, and
Mhm.
my husband and I, do some stock stuff on the side for hunting and just
Yeah.
pleasure riding. So a lot of times I'll come back from days working with the stock at the Forest Service and come home and load up our own stock. So we get a
Right.
lot of days in the summer in this season of our life. So we're pretty lucky.
Do you get to use your own stock very much when you're doing Forest Service work, or do they have their own?
They have predominantly they have their own, and for a while there were quite a few older critters, and so I did bring my mule the last 2 seasons, Candy, who was at Salmon, and she came with me, which I kind of like to have her because we ride horses and pack the mules, and most of the mules, some of them maybe have come with being broke to ride and pack, but we don't ride mules very often. But I like to have Candy in the string because I kind of see it as a good backup plan. Plus, I just like being around my own stock, so it's fun to be able to bring her, but I don't go too much beyond that just because, as the Forest Service folks, as taxpayers are paying
Yeah.
for heads of stock to be fed. So we definitely use them, but swap them out as needed. And that's been a really interesting experience too, just working with so many different head of stock because prior to that, we've always had a handful, but we have I think 22 right now. So getting to know them all on a real deep level and getting to know where they all fit in the string and who gets along with who and all those dynamics has been really eye-opening for me because I've never been around that large of a herd, so that's been really fun.
Heck yeah. So is it just mostly seasonal, or are you year round doing something?
It's called an 18 and 8 position. So for 9 months of the year, I'm employed as a packer and either in preseason or the working season or postseason sort of stuff. So right now I'm laid off. I'll start up again like end of March, 1st of April, pretty close to the salmon clinic, and go back into the packing season. But right now I'm doing some side dietitian stuff and just kind of keeping busy with that and clean and tack and all that fun stuff
Heck yeah.
until the season picks up again. And then we'll go through early November is usually our last trip into our backcountry station. It's pretty low elevation, so we're able to go in there. But it's crazy to see it from essentially March to November, how much things change back there. And
Oh
um,
yeah.
yeah, it's pretty neat.
So what, tell me again, what ranges are you mostly packing into?
So we work in the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness. So it's for the most part on the Idaho Montana border sort of country. But we also work on the Nez Perce Clearwater Forest. So a lot of it's, central Idaho and some of that western Montana Bitterroot Range country, it's a pretty large amount of land. I think it's 3.8 million acres is the whole forest. And I mean, it's a ton of country. So it's myself and then one other packer, Pete, who has been on the district. This will be his 20th season packing. And just talking about our nutrition chat earlier, and it's never too late to kind of revisit that. He's been a really great mentor for me in mulemanship, but it's been really fun to see how he's been diving into his own health and taking care of himself. He's got a goal to pack for 30 years, and I think he's got it no problem. But
Mhm.
to do that, you have to take care of yourself pretty proactively. So it's been fun to work with Pete. We have a great a great friendship, and he's been a huge mentor for me in my mulemanship and packing, of course. But it's fun to feel like I've maybe had a little bit of influence on him nutrition wise, a little bit. But I think I got the better end of the deal because he's been huge for me in learning about packing.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. It's good to have people like that in your life. I think it's important, people that, and I'm not just talking about having a mentor, but also being around people that are willing to learn. I think that's part of a mentor being a good mentor is seeing that they are also interested in learning things. They're open to learning. I like that in a mentor. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, that's I would say that describes Pete to a T. He's always kind of under construction and is kind of an innovator. And
Mhm.
um, I guess in general, not to apply this to everybody, but the norm of a packer is a lot different than Pete's approach to horsemanship. And that's been really cool because he's willing to go out on a limb and do things a little bit differently and seek new ways of doing things from places that packers from the past have not ever even thought about. So like you're saying, he's willing to work on himself and look to other people to always keep learning. So yeah, he's somebody I hope to be like in my horsemanship for sure.
Oh, heck yeah. So, have you had any wild experiences packing yet? I mean, any fun adventures or any situations that tested your skills or anything like that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would say for sure. I've been trying to think of some good ones to share. I guess for the most part, it's pretty mellow, I guess.
Good.
And we try to keep it that way and just try to keep the tempo pretty even keel. I mean, that's one huge thing. One good bit of advice for anybody interested in packing. It's really good to try to master your reactions to things, if that makes sense. Because it seems like in that herd environment, when you have multiple animals and you can become kind of that leader that they look to, it can be really helpful to be as even keel as possible. So I've tried to do that and accomplish that with anything that goes kind of hairy. I try to stay as mellow and even keel as possible. Now maybe on the inside I'm a little bit like, whoa, things are changing fast here. But if you have established that relationship with them, it seems like they kind of look to you like, are we okay, and maybe you can relate to that in some ways. But I've been trying to keep small problems small. But
Yep.
things happen, and we have young stock that we try to integrate with the older animals, so that helps. And only introducing a few new things at a time, not expecting too much out of our young animals. That's been really helpful. And for Pete's my fellow Packer Pete's his long record of packing, he's had pretty minimal, big wrecks. Everybody likes to talk about and ask you about, what's your worst wreck and what's happened. And Pete's had some things happen on the trail and critters go upside down, but that's kind of where it stops. It doesn't turn into this, big, huge blow up because he is able to kind of put the lid on things just by his approach to it. So I've been trying to do things that way myself and have been lucky enough to have things go pretty smooth. There's always other elements that you can't control, though, like wildlife. I mean, we've had cougars, it's pretty cougar heavy on our district. So I've seen some cats. I've had a dead cat actually in the trail that I had to
Wow.
bring the string by, and it kind of caught me by surprise. Came around a corner, and it was relatively all right, but just surprising things like that. Animals, other trail users, and it's always a fairly positive experience, but it can take you by surprise. And people loose herding goats and things like that makes for some interesting experiences.
Yeah,
But I would say it's relatively mellow and
that's
the
good.
stock stay that way and it's been pretty positive overall.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. You're
Yeah.
probably one of the first Packers I've had on the podcast that answered it that way. But I like that because that means you guys are implementing the type of mulemanship that we promote and the type of things that we teach, I'm always preaching to people, hey, you do the work and it'll pay off. Like, do the things and you'll be okay. At least you'll get by. It sounds like you guys are doing that, which is super awesome. So hope you keep up that record. It's a good record to have.
I know, right? I don't want to jinx it, but I think we got a good thing going. I think it's gonna stay
Yeah.
that way, Ty.
Heck yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this has been awesome having you on. The time has flown by. Um,
Yeah.
I really appreciate all that you've shared on the show here. And um, is there anything else you want to talk about before I move it on here? Anything we didn't get to that you wanted to talk on?
I'm trying to think. Let's see. No, I think I'll be able to kind of mesh it all together in the final
Okay.
question. I know
All
your
right.
final question because I'm a listener. So
That's right. Yeah, we always ask our guests for advice. What's a piece of advice you give these listeners of ours that are going through this thing called life? What would you like to tell them?
well, this might take a little bit because it kind of comes with a story, but
Let's do it.
um okay. So having heard your podcast before, I knew this would be a question, and I never expected to be a guest on the podcast. But I was thinking this morning about what will I share? How will it be relevant to
Mm.
mulemanship and hopefully life and maybe even some food. So I thought of a story which hopefully your listeners will enjoy from this past season, of an instance where I just kind of like had to inventory my judgmental thoughts. And I know one of your previous guests, Warwick Schiller, I really like what he has to say about that and how he talks about the rocks in his pocket and switching them over
Mhm.
from one side to the other. But I've been trying to keep those in check lately, and hopefully the outcomes will benefit my mulemanship. But there was an instance this summer on the trail where I kind of ran into one of those situations that you just never expect. I ran into some other stock users at this backcountry station that I was, rolling up to at the end of a really long day. So my patience was thin. I was hungry. Mules are tired. They want to go graze. But I got up to these fellows and they wanted to stop and chit chat for a while, which I always try to have a positive interaction with everybody. And I really do like to visit, but man, I was tired at the end of that day. So I start visiting with these guys, and as I get closer, I see their stalker all picking it out. I see they're in full buckskins from head to toe, and just like big, huge, grizzled beards, and just these rough looking guys. And I'm thinking to myself, like, who are these weirdos? Like, how did they end up back here?
Mountain men.
They
Yeah.
were true mountain men. And so I started talking to them, and yes, they were mountain men. They were dressing up for a rendezvous over on
Mm.
the other side of the Bitterroot Divide, and so they were headed that way. And we had just had a pretty bad wind event, so they had gotten kind of waylaid in their plans, and what they thought would just be a couple days trip was they were now on their third week of this trip. So they were hanging out there for a night overnight, and their stock looked hungry. So I said, well, I'll come tie in with you guys, a little bit later. So I went and pulled the saddles and loads off all the mules and had a snack and went back down there. They insisted that I come back down for dinner. So I thought, okay, well, I wonder what they've got after 3 weeks of being in the backcountry. I better bring something to offer. So I
Yeah.
went back down there and visited with them for a little while. And this was me thinking, like, these guys are so strange. I'm not going to have anything in common with these guys. They got horses. I guess I'll ask them about their horses.
Mhm.
And I was incredibly surprised at how great of a conversation I had with these guys. I mean, they offered me dinner, and so I said, sure. And they cooked up like these dried potatoes and some jerky they threw in this pot, and it was boiling. So they gave me a bowl of this porridge, and they offered me like some hot pepper or something. And I said, sure, I got to get the full experience. And they had this goat horn that they pulled the lid off of and said, here, do you want some? And so I put some on my porridge, and they said, do you want some cheese? And I thought, these guys have been on the trail for 3 weeks. Like, I
Oh
felt like I
no.
could smell the cheese from across the campfire, but I thought, I don't want to be rude, so I better take some cheese. Anyways, so I had a really interesting meal with these guys and got to know them. And the one fellow was he happened to be a professor of veterinary medicine at Texas A&M, and
Wow.
the other guy was an acupuncturist, kind of a naturopath, and we had this really in-depth talk about nutrition. And I sat and talked with those guys for hours around the campfire, and I thought to myself, like, that was one of the richest experiences I could have had. These people are out here, they wanted to enjoy this backcountry just like I did. So I guess the lesson there would be you never really know what you're going to have in common with people until you allow yourself to get to know them and kind of break down those barriers. So I guess the lesson there for me would be don't underestimate the power of a shared meal or a cup of coffee, or kind of coming together and breaking bread, if you will. They say that you can't really have an enemy if you've broken bread with somebody. So sharing a meal, there's a lot of power in that. And food is more than just macronutrients. It's coming together, it's celebrating numerous things, and it can be a way to break down barriers and find common ground. So I was glad I took the opportunity to have this strange porridge with cheese from these mountain men in the middle of the backcountry. But it did prove to me that there's something you can have in common and something you can learn from everybody. So that's my lesson.
That is awesome. That makes me think about my potlucks. You've been to my potlucks.
Yes, yes, I love that.
Yeah, it's always fun to. That's one of my favorite parts of the whole clinic. Not just because of the food, but I mean, I love the food, no doubt. We always have good food most of the time. But I love the social part that you're talking about. I love to ask people what they do for a living. That's when I found out about what you do, and it's just fun to visit with different people and get to know them on a deeper level. Like for me, especially at the clinics, because at the clinics, everybody's. I guess I'm the one on the pedestal, up there doing my preaching, and everybody knows me and they know what I do. My life is very public, but I don't know everybody else. I don't know what they do. So I love that part of it. That's pretty cool. And yeah, it's easy to judge. You look at somebody and you think, well, I'm probably going to try to guess what they do. And I'm almost never right.
Yep, I would have never guessed that those mountain men did. They were just playing dress up. But yeah,
Yeah.
you're totally right. And I love the when I first got the itinerary for your clinic last year, and I saw that there was a potluck. I had to tell Pete, the other packer, because he's always giving me a hard time that I'm a potluck junkie. Like I just love them. They're just so fun.
Mhm.
But that's why. That's exactly why you really get to know people, and a lot of times they're kind of represented through the meal that they or the dish that they bring. So it can be pretty special. Plus, then you get to eat good food, so can't complain about that.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is the cultural part of it. Different parts of the country I go to.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
like we go to the south, there's certain things people bring. We go to the north, there's certain things people bring, and so that's really fun to me too. Is what's showing up there, and I always hope there's something cultural to it. I really do. I think that's
yeah.
really fun when they're like, hey, you know what, this is from this area. This is kind of what's going on here. Yeah, I had my first bear meat in Idaho, up there in that country, and just yeah,
Whoa,
just we hunt a lot of bears. Here you go, eat up, you know,
I love
and
that.
yeah, I mean we run into all kinds of stuff, so it's pretty fun. I love it.
It is fun. I'm looking forward to salmon
Yeah,
and
we're gonna
Bonner's
have a good
Ferry.
time.
I'll be at Bonner's Ferry too. I can't wait to see you guys there.
Sweet, yeah,
Yeah.
you'll love coming up there. You met Jason Cordell
Yep.
at Salmon. He and his wife Lena, they're the hosts up there at Bonners Ferry. That's fun. That's a good one.
Yeah, I'm
I was
looking
telling
forward
you
to it
about
myself.
Element. They're the ones that got me hooked on Element.
Oh, really?
Element. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. They're the ones that talked me into that. So, well, heck
Yeah,
yeah.
he's a firefighter, a structure firefighter, I think. But yeah, we had a good chat, and they like to hunt, and yeah, they're good folks. I can't wait to hang out with them. And you got a lot of good people at your clinics, Ty. I made a lot of really cool connections with Jason, Alyssa, and them,
Yeah.
Jason and Lena. And then, yeah, I had a really good time with Jesse Coltrane. So I can't wait to meet more of your followers of this podcast and your style of
Heck yeah.
mulemanship. So I appreciate it.
Heck yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I sure appreciate this. This has been awesome.
Yeah, it's been great. And if anybody has any follow ups, feel free to reach out. I'm
Yeah, how
happy
can they
to.
find you? Tell them how to find out about you and your dietitian program and all that you do.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a social media as much as I think all of us outdoorsy folks don't like the social media side of things. It's kind of necessary to connect and it's a great way to connect. So I have a social media. It's the Decker Dietitian, Decker being kind of a nod to the packing side of things. And
Yeah.
so I post a lot of stuff about food, nutrition, and packing. So if you're interested in any of those things or all of them, there's a way to follow me there. And then I work as a dietitian for a private practice group. It's called Valley to Peak Nutrition. And really, Kyle Camp is his name. He's the head dietitian there out of Boise. And he does a lot of one on one consulting with folks trying to improve their nutrition. from all walks of life, but he really focuses on folks who like to spend time in the outdoors. So anything from hunting to backpacking, anything like this would be relevant. So he is on v2pnutrition.com, or you can follow his Instagram at v2pnutrition. So lots of different ways. Yeah, or hopefully I'll see some of you at a clinic, and I'd love to talk more there too.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Heidi. All of you guys listening, highly recommend you get some stuff lined out. The better you feel, the better you'll write. I promise you that. No doubt there. So do it. Huge thanks to all of our sponsors that make this episode free for everybody. We got Roman Home Tents. We got Diamond W Enterprises, Colt Saddlery, Western Mule Magazine, and Mules and More Magazine. So big shout out to all those people making this episode free for you guys. So make sure you support them. And with that, you guys, thank you so much for listening. God bless you, and we will see you down the road.